name's Justin. I'm the owner of the Close Enough Racing MR2 that's just sitting behind me over here. Just putting together a bit of a video. I've been asked a few times what bits and pieces we've done to the car and whatnot, or what's been done to it, what we plan on doing with it, sort of things. So, and sort of been a bit inspired recently to put together a video myself after being locked up at home watching a lot of videos. Mainly with our current world situation where we're sort of not really allowed to go out and do anything, any major events or whatnot that or have been cancelled or not going ahead, including World Time Attack this year that's not going ahead. But sort of found a lot of videos that other people have been putting out pretty interesting to watch. So thought I'd do something myself, occupy my time. Might be interesting to some, but we'll see how we go. Hopefully I can actually document the entire build of the car, or sorry, the build from this point of the car, from where it sits and where we plan on going with it. When I'm making reference to we, it's a case of I like to think of my closest group of mates. We all fall under the Close Enough Racing banner. They're the people who have helped put the car together and who actually help run the car when we do anything with it. So being at normal sprint days or club days all the way up to World Time Attack, they're always there, helping along the way, making sure things are going all right. But I guess the main thing I'd probably just start off with is, well, it's a rundown of the car. It's a 2000 import MR2 from Japan, actual, I guess what you call a genuine MRS, that I acquired off a mate probably, would be about 10 years ago now actually. That was sort of sold to me on the principle that it'll actually be make a really good track car. So took a while to get started on actually turning it into a track car, but it's had a fair progression from when I first bought it to where it sits at the moment. Ideally, the plan is to actually put together a series of videos, or having actually find time to do that'll actually document what we're sort of doing in the background preparation, what it takes to actually get something like this going. Definitely been, as I said, mentioned, was watching a lot of videos on people prepping cars for competing in different kinds of motorsport and building cars for different reasons, and it's actually been pretty inspiring myself to pull the finger out and try and put things back together, because the main thing with this car is it's car together with my mates. So since we've had this whole COVID thing and being locked down, not being able to actually see your mates, progress on the car has pretty much stopped to a halt. We haven't done anything since probably end of last year. We finished up at Time Attack and then put together a list of stuff that needs to be done on the car to prep it for its next evolution as such. Pulled things apart and ready to get started working on it, and then everything just sort of shut down. So can't even go to the store as such to actually buy parts or whatnot. So from here, I'll just run a quick video of what we've actually done to the car and what we plan on doing. So as the car sits now, I'll do a quick run through if there's anybody that might find this kind of arrangement interesting, but I'll start at the front end first. It basically got our ducted carbon hood with ducting from the for the radiator and the heat exchanger for the intercooler system. It's just a standard Koyo radiator. We do still have the original thermo fans in there, which we're finding we probably can actually ditch. They're not really necessary. The car never really runs long enough stationary to actually need fans in there, and grabbing any weight you can is always a good thing. There's the manual brake booster arrangement that we went, not booster, the manual brake pedal that we went to minus the booster at the end of last year, which has just made the car so much easier to handle. It makes a huge difference also with the being able to set your own brake bias, because we did have the problem with our ABS ECU cracking the SADs and stop working, which meant the brake biasing has a default position, which from Toyota I believe is rear biased, which is making the car pretty skittish under brakes. So with this, it's just a whole new car, makes things a lot easier to drive. Also, is it just the swirl pot for the intercooler. Over the back, you can see is just I've put a reservoir on the power steering, so we haven't made it a completely manual rack. So it's ideally something I'd like to do. It's just sort of one of those things when you can find the time, because it works at the moment. But just putting a breather basically on it so that you don't get any binding. So originally I did it have plumbed back on itself, but this way seems to make it feel a bit better. So whether it's doing something, not really sure, but it does feel a lot better. And then the suspension wise, running some custom shockwork stuff that they put together. We've recently changed spring rates at the front. So originally we were running, end of last year, 5 kilo springs. And it was actually, the car felt really good at low speed, but we were having problems with high speed turning of, not sure whether I think it was just the car was leaning over too much and we were bottoming out and whatnot. So we've gone up to an 8 kilo spring on the front, but the new arrangement is, as you can see it, but we've changed to a helper spring on there now. So I've been informed that makes things better. I'm not sure how, because I'm not a suspension person, but Chris from Shockworks has worked out what he's doing, so I'll trust his judgment or his knowledge base. Other thing up front is running Porsche calipers, so they're just Porsche Boxster calipers, the standard. I'm pretty sure they're made by Brembo, nothing typically spectacular, but in doing so, we can get a really good selection of pads for it, as well as changing over to a 2-piece rotor, so it becomes a bit cheaper to actually replace bits and pieces for the braking system. So this is actually going to be the same arrangement front and rear. So at the moment it's the rear, which is actually off the car at the moment, is still the standard caliper, but running the same rotor as the front. But what we're looking to do in the next batch of upgrades is change to the same caliper front and rear, same rotor front and rear, just to make servicing a lot easier. The rear suspension being off is getting the same treatment. That's also getting changed over to a heavier rear spring. So I think originally we're on a 9 kilo rear spring and we're going up to an 18 kilo rear spring. So it should make things a little bit more skittish, but also should be a lot easier to drive at high speed. Well, what I'm hoping. Same thing with that is upgraded, so we run camber tops on the rear as well. They're getting upgraded camber tops as well. And also what we found was that we actually started bending our sway bar links, so gonna have to get some stronger ones of those. That was an interesting one. It was sort of, we hadn't bent them before and I was sort of wondering how we hadn't, but yeah, we've bent them now, so. And then the rear hubs that are off is because just getting new bearings put into it. But that's sort of how things are, how the car's sitting at the moment. Yes, it's a bit choppy, but standard engine, which you probably saw for just sitting here. Background is, once again, nothing overly special about it. It's just some forged pistons, forged rods, ACL bearings, ARP studs. It does have monkey wrench stage 3 cams in it, but we don't actually really, well, our last tune we weren't even using the high cam, we're actually just running straight in the low cam, and it still managed to get the power we wanted, but it might be something we need to fiddle with when we get a more efficient turbo and can breathe a bit better. But that's not me, that's up to the tuner. Inside the car, flick over to this, is not going to see, it's pretty dark in there, but just running a standard NRG quick release, Sparco steering wheel, Sparco seat, still the original column in there. We do have a carbon dash. The screen that we're using in there is actually, I'll just go around to the other side. Is sort of an interesting one, because I did want a color display for my just for my dash, but I came across these gauge art things which allowed you to draw up your own dash in a drawing program, sort of thing, like MS Paint or whatnot, which I thought was kind of funky. Like, it looked like I think it works out almost the same price as buying a basic dash anyway, but I don't know, I just thought it was mildly amusing to play around with. The team probably wasn't a big fan of it because they ended up having to actually make the dash, color in the dash for me, but it's sort of a screen with a VGA input that comes from a little module under here, and then that just goes into the CAN hub and into, a bit dark in here, let me just move all this stuff out. Goes into this arrangement, which is our I'm not sure if we can see, might actually get a light. Try that again with a bit more light, but that's the all the wiring basically in the car comes back to here. I did look at the PDMs, but once again it was sort of with my budget constraints, this was sort of an option I went with. It's all solid state stuff, so solid state relays, solid state fusibles, all self-resetting or manually resettable. So it does the same sort of thing vaguely, other than monitoring the actual circuit currents and voltages, but I haven't had any issues with it. I think other than the space, that it would be actually kind of cool to have a passenger seat to take your friends for a ride, but that might be something that I'll look at in the future. So I guess on the back side you can see the hole that I've cut out for the new fuel cell to actually go in. Oh, actually, worth mentioning probably is, as well, is we've done the wiring so that there's a breakaway loom to the back, so it makes pulling the engine out a lot easier. So, on the back wall, once again, light is pretty terrible. You can sort of see over the back, there's the multi-pin connector as well as some Anderson plugs. So when you're on the engine, for us to drop the engine out of the car is basically just the oil lines, the cooling, or the oil sandwich plate, and then the cooling lines, and then on the actual engine we just have the one connector that we basically have to break away, and then the engine's ready to drop out, or other than drive shafts obviously, but it makes things a lot easier mechanical wise to get everything out, because it means we can put all the sensors onto the engine outside the car, then put it in, and then just have to put the one connector in. So after going through everything that we've how the car sits, what our big take back from the last event into last year was that well, for now we actually have we've managed to put together a pretty reliable engine package, so we're comfortable with how that finished up after a year of running it. So it's taken us a few years to actually, for various reasons, to actually get a reliable engine. Don't think it hasn't actually been anything to do with the design of the engine or anything in particular with failing parts of what you'd call or what you'd list as OEM defects or whatnot. It's actually been during pretty much every failure has been due to assembly issues. So either mainly due to incorrect parts being installed. So what we did for this engine package is we actually put everything, the team put everything together. Obviously we can't do machining and whatnot, so we've had the block sent away to be crack tested and whatnot and cleaned, and then have the bottom end of it balanced, all that sort of thing. But all bearing clearances and assembly and everything was done by ourselves. So we're pretty confident of what we've seen go into the engine, and I guess the results speak for themselves in that we've managed to get a reliable package. But what the reliable package has now resulted into is we're starting our proper development, I guess you'd call it. So the background of everybody in the team not really being in a what do you call it, mechanic or motorsport background, everybody has cars as a hobby, but we have like a lot of IT. Well, we have IT professionals. Myself I'm an electrical engineer by trade, so I don't really do anything to do with cars with my line of work. But being an engineer as such, and I guess the other guys who are software engineers and technical people, it actually has given our default thinking process is to actually get down and figure out what problems are, and the enjoyment of actually problem solving and whatnot to try and get things to where they are is sort of what has driven us. But with that kind of thought process, now we've managed to get the mechanical aspect of things down that we're comfortable with, that we can drive the car and get everything sort of happen. Like we can actually turn laps, get data back. Has led us to where we sit now, where we had a big list of upgrades that we sat down and went through of things that we found issues with World Time Attack when we competed. And the main issue that we had was heat soak. So understandably, I think it was a 35 degree day that we were up there on. But what we found is that after a couple of laps or one hot, so it's the way that we predominantly run the car is for World Time Attack with the, I think it's like 12-15 minute sessions we get is out lap, hot lap, cool down lap, hot lap. If there's time and the car's looking all right, try and throw in another hot lap, or if things are pretty spent how it is, it's just cool down lap, come in, get people to come over look over the car. But what we were finding is after our first hot lap, things were getting a little out of control, and we weren't able to bring we were finding issues with the intake temperatures. So water temp, oil temp, not an issue. The cooling system in this is there's nothing over the top as I've been through on it. There's nothing over the top fancy about it, but it just seems to work without having any real issues. But what we did have issues with is the intake temperatures. So when on boost, you can see where our intake temperatures were getting up to around 90 degrees. But then what we're finding is that they were coming back down like pretty quickly. So as in after getting up to 90 degrees, they were dropping probably 20 degrees in intake temperature within the space of 2-3 corners, which is sort of pointing us towards that the actual intercooler just wasn't efficient enough. So when it was being hit with a lot of hot air pretty quickly, it wasn't able to actually draw any of the temperature out of it. But the actual system, we're guessing or predicting, is actually efficient enough to maintain temperatures if we upgrade the intercooler. Also, as part of that, it leads into the turbo. The turbo that we were using was a Turbonetics, I think it's equivalent to like a 60-1 series, or in Garrett terms, it's around a 3582, but just really old, like 1990s technology. So oil only, no water cooler, like water feed to it. Like it's super reliable turbo. We did all sorts of nasty things to it. Has absolutely no shaft play. Had no fault issue with that turbo the whole time we've had it. But in doing that, I think it's expected efficiency finishes around 22 pound, whereas when we were trying to run our high boost application, we were trying to, like, I think our wastegate pressure our low boost pressure is like 18 pound, I think. But our high boost we've taken it up to 29 pound before. So it's just well past the efficiency range of the actual turbo. So at that point, it's just turned into like a blast furnace kind of heater arrangement. So part of one of the upgrades focusing on the cooling aspect of things is not only just the actual intercooler, but also the turbo. So we're moving over to a Garrett turbo. So it's a GTX 3582 arrangement, but we've got a different compressor wheel on there that we've got from ATP turbos. So we'll see how that goes. But hopefully the mix of a much larger intercooler, so we're going for an intercooler that's twice the size of what we used to run, plus a much more efficient turbo, should keep us within the efficiency range that we're looking for, or the intake temperatures that we're looking for. Because I think the downside of what we found, it's sort of you get a climbing effect of when one thing breaks down, it leads to another and another. Because what was happening is when we were getting those intake temperatures, they are controlled, because we do run on E85. Those temperatures are fairly well controlled in the sense that the ECU safety fallback thing is to dump a bit more fuel in to try and cool the cylinders. But in doing so, that also starts to suck a bit of power, and you can only put so much fuel in before you start to run out of fueling. So with the arrangement we had in this, where we had the 1000cc injectors with the 340 litre per hour, I think it's the AEM pump, what was happening is that if we tried to run high boost, we're actually running out of headroom for fueling, so that when it went to go into like its safe limp mode or putting in a bit more fuel, we actually just ran out of fueling. So everything was sort of maxed out, so that limited our high boost. So as soon as we got to the super hot days that we had at World Time Attack, was we couldn't actually use high boost, because it was just dumping too much fuel in there to try and keep the temperatures down. So we were limited to low boost, and even then it was just getting too hot. So hopefully with the list of stuff that we plan on doing, it should get that under control. So other than the fueling aspect of things, which really is the cooling, the goal of that is cooling, is the list of other upgrades that we plan to go through. So with the turbo upgrade and the fueling aspect of things running out, we thought even if we got a more efficient turbo, what we might as well do just for safety, if we want to make the same, or if we want to make more power, like I think our goal now is to try and basically max out the 3582 for what we can. We're moving over to the 525, I think it is, the Bosch fuel pump, as well as 1650cc injectors, the Bosch Motorsport stuff. So changing over to that. Also, I think our didn't mention was that what we found is the amount of fuel the car was using was starting to get fuel surge with the tank arrangement that was in there standard. So it wasn't filling up the MRS sort of has I guess you'd call it a very loose kind of surge pod arrangement inside, but there's a few issues with that mainly it can't fill fast enough even if your return line goes in there, as well as read various other things, or what people have mentioned of that when it pressurizes, the fuel actually leaks out of the cup that's holding the filter at the bottom. So it's just not an ideal scenario, particularly if you're trying to push as much fuel as we want to. The real main thing is just fuel cell. You just have to move to one. So there's a few options that are looked at with putting tanks at the front and whatnot, but then thinking about it, I actually liked the location of where it was, tucked up under the body, instead of putting more weight at the front, which sort of may take up room for ducting and whatnot that we plan to do at the front. Thought I'd try and use the space that was already there. So I'll just wander over to where I'm working on the fuel systems. So what we're upgrading to is a fuel cell that's been put together to take one of the standard Raceworks I guess your fuel hanger config. The only issue is because it's taking up the standard location, it's actually a bit deeper than what they allowed for this, so I'm currently just working on making extensions to get the fuel pump to the bottom of the tank. And the new intercooler, which I already spoke about, is this one, so it's definitely a bit bigger than what we already had. So I guess the main thing with the fuel tank is, I'm not sure you can probably see it, but there's a lot more internal baffles in it than what the original fuel tank had, which should hopefully keep things in check, or hopefully stop us getting fuel siege again, should I say. So it's only a 25 litre tank, which in theory, if we're on full noise high boost, should give us the 2 laps that we need, with the in lap, out lap, cool down lap in between. But we'll soon find out when we actually start testing. That's when we can actually get back on track. One of the other things that we're changing over to is the gearbox. So as much as the existing gearbox that we had was perfectly fine, it seemed to be strong enough. If we start putting any more power into it, we may actually come into a few issues. So what I've opted to do is taking a bit of research online, is looking at the Jubu straight cut set. So the gears are a lot more chunky than the existing gears that are in there. We did look at other options, like I've wanted to go towards a sequential, but as a lot of people would actually know, they're a little pricey. So this is sort of the best option that I'm going with, is that to get the strongest gear set that I can, and then manage to get a hold of the old IKEA sequential shifter. So what in theory it should do is turn our H-pattern straight cut dog box into a sequential style, a sequential shifted sort of operation, which then leads into the being able to get the advantages of the clutchless shifting and whatnot, which actually follows into the next side of things of the going over to drive-by-wire is one of the next upgrades. So I've got a pedal, I believe it's off a Corolla, it has to be modified and whatnot, and then changing over to a 2GR throttle body. So that's, I got to organise to get that sent off and whatnot, to get the vibrant clamps and stuff attached to it, to a manifold, just so that matches up to our existing system. I may have forgotten to go over a few things in this video. It's a lot to go over, but and to summarize. But yeah, if anybody is interested, it's sort of the list that I was working with of stuff that we have planned is fairly extensive. So, but yeah, no, if anybody has any interest in anything else, feel free to post a comment or message or whatnot, and then I'll try and help assist or answer any questions as they come through. But cheers for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in another video. Cheers!